So often, women complain that their male partner does not express his feelings and doesn't even allow her to express her feelings, or he expects her to just get over it. Well, today's speaker will provide an enlightening discussion about how men experience their emotions and how this affects their intimate relationships. Welcome to the Men in Love series. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Goodstone. In this event, you will hear from thought leaders on the forefront of knowledge and experience about men and love. And today, I'm really delighted to welcome Marni Feuerman. We know each other from a local Boca Raton mental health counselors group, and we've been there for a few years. Mm-hmm. And I've also attended some of your live events, so I have an idea of how you work. So welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Erica. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
So please begin by telling us about your education, your experience, your training that helps you to understand men and relationships and intimacy.
Sure. Well, I have a master's in social work, and I am now currently in my doctoral program for clinical psychology. I'm working on my dissertation right now, so I'm at the tail end. Can't wait for that to be finished up. And I have a private practice in Boca Raton, and I specialize in couples therapy, working with people who want to fix their marriage. Sometimes I work with highly distressed couples that are even on the brink of divorce. And I've been specializing in couples work for, I would say, about the last 10 to 12 years. And it's definitely an area that I feel really passionate about. So I'm glad to be here talking about some elements of, what I've learned from my practice.
So let's start with what you've discovered are some of the differences between the way men experience and express their emotions and the way women do.
That's a really good question. Don't people always want to know about these gender differences? I will start out by saying I have a little bit of a skewed sample because I am, basing a lot of this information off of couples that are coming in for help. So there's already some problems and some issues.
That's a good reminder because we sometimes forget that there are people that really
have no problems at all.
Right, they're getting along great. They figured out their communication.
Right. From what I notice, women tend to be able to identify and name their emotions a lot easier. So they have much more of they're able to verbalize, and they have more of an emotional fluency is what we call it. So they're able to know what they're feeling, name it, and be able to say it a lot easier. So that is something that I noticed, and I know later on we'll talk a little bit about the reasons behind that. And then as far as the actual emotions go, I noticed that men tend to do anger a lot more, and women do sad and hurt a lot more. It's not that, men can't get hurt and women can't get angry. We see that, but I think we're just talking about maybe some themes here that I've noticed. And men tend to express their feelings more in a physical way. So whether that's sexually or they're doing things for their spouse or their girlfriend. So we call that acts of service. They'll say, I waxed your car and I filled it with gas, and then I came home and I helped you with the dishes and the kids. And so that's more of their emotional expression of love and caring. And so that's one thing that I also hear a lot about. I guess another interesting thing is, for people who call to come in for counseling or for help with their relationship, it is usually the woman. And women are most often the initiators of divorce. I think it's something like 2/3 of women. So that kind of tells us a lot, that a lot of it at times I think has to do with the emotional disconnect or two people not really being on the same wavelength emotionally, not being able to find their way to each other. So that's, something that is quite prevalent.
And often the woman has been attempting to tell the man what her problem is, what she's upset about, and he's not hearing it.
Yes, that's a very good point. In fact, I'll tell men, if I kind of can get them on time, I'll say, when your woman stops nagging, that you're in even more trouble, because that's when she's detaching. That's when she's withdrawing and numbing out. Men may think, oh, everything's okay now. I'm not hearing her nag that she wants to talk and, spend this time with me and all of this. But it's really not a good sign. So that's when they start checking out. And that's when one day, you're served with divorce papers and you're like, I thought everything, the men think everything was okay. So we do see that. And it's a really scary dynamic that happens that people should learn about. So the other piece is that I notice is men tend to shut down more. They tend to be more the ones to avoid or be dismissive or kind of have that sort of style when it comes to communication. And again, I want to say that it doesn't mean that women don't or that women aren't the ones that primarily do that in a particular relationship. But if we look at overall evidence, men tend to do what we call stonewall, shut down or refuse to talk. They just seem to be more the gender that does that. And on that note, men tend to internalize more than women. Women, we have a lot of avenues to express ourselves emotionally. It's much more socially acceptable. We can call, mom, an aunt, a friend. We have much more of a supportive network to share our emotions with. And men don't tend to have that nearly as much. And so that's something that, it's unfortunate. Hopefully that's going to change. And when doing things like this, I think help educate. And I think
it's already changing.
Yeah, I think it is. So anyway, so that's most of it, I would say, some of the things that I've, come across.
So why and in what ways do men struggle with expressing their emotions? Why is it such a problem for men?
Well, I think if we look at the research, we don't have definitive answers. The results are kind of mixed. So I think that that evidence has been found that there are differences in the way that men process, detect, and express emotion. So there are some that do show that that does exist, but we also have other studies that show that there's a lot more similarities than differences emotionally. And so I think, we have, of course, brain structure and the internal things, testosterone and stuff that we know affect us. But I think the biggest piece is probably socialization. And there's a lot of stereotypes about men and the way they express themselves. And I think it can really still get passed on. But like you said, I think it is changing, and it'd be interesting to see even the next generation. Because I think that, we just sort of like the messages that boys are sent growing up, I don't think helps them. If they cry, they might be called a wimp or a wuss. They're told to suck it up a lot. Sometimes even I still hear that, when men are, in counseling, and you figure out, well, what's going on that they're having such difficulty. They're having trouble showing these vulnerable emotions. And a lot of times they will say right out, they're like, no one told me to do that. No one taught me to. And if I did, I was told, suck it up. And, big boys don't cry. And I think it happens less and less because we are so much more aware. And I'm glad it is starting to change, because we do boys who become men a big disservice by sending those messages to them.
And as you were talking, I was thinking of an image of the Marlboro Man. An old image, but that's the image we used to have.
Yes, and
cartoon with Popeye. I'm not talking generations ago, but it was all this really tough men.
Yes, and I think that's also why we see, when there's been some look at men and depression, that's a big part of the reason. To not be able to express yourself emotionally or seek support, or you have a feeling and you're struggling to reach for somebody, men get very depressed. And so
they feel these emotions, but they feel like, I'm not allowed or supposed to have this. I must be a weak man. They don't know who they are anymore.
Yes, it significantly affects their view of themselves. And we know how critical that is to have a self-concept that is, a little more giving and forgiving. You know what I mean? So I think that can get carried on. And luckily, we do have a lot of good information that tells us that really isn't really isn't a good idea. And that when we expect these men to grow up and especially if they're becoming husbands one day, that it's such an expectation of the wife that there is this amount of emotional connectivity for the relationship to thrive, and then men can sometimes be very inadequate at that.
And what I've also found is very often in the office, the guy expresses what he really feels and gets jumped on because he's not saying it the way she wants him to say it.
I've seen that too, and I think where men are fearful at times to go, to go into therapy. If you're with someone, a therapist who really understands some of these dynamics and these, these things that we're talking about, if they get that, usually they'll catch those things and they'll try to work with it and help the couple along and help the wife see that, the man really is struggling. And sometimes you can bring out what these men will describe as this catch-22. And I've heard it so many times before. They'll say, the wife will complain, my husband shuts down. And then you hear the shut down husband saying, well, I want to show you how I feel. I really am upset. I'm just as upset as you are. But if I show you that, you're going to see me as weak. And sometimes the women will say, well, gosh, they'll recognize that. They're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Like, I want him to come to me and tell me these things, yet on the other hand, maybe I will see it as weak. And that really sends a very mixed message. And then men are caught with, like, what do I really do here?
So it's going back and forth. And so the other side of this is, how can knowing and expressing your emotions as clearly as you can, how can that help you to communicate and have a better relationship?
Well, I think it creates an emotional connection, and we know that emotional connection is what sustains long-term healthy relationships. And so couples can learn to be really emotionally engaged with each other on a feeling level. They can express their care and their responsiveness and their love in that way. And I think it helps people feel safe and secure. I think that's probably the end goal, is to feel like I can really count on this person. This person will really be there for me. When I have a problem, they're stepping up. They're right there. When they have a bad day, they're sharing it, and they're sharing it deeper. They're not just kind of spewing the facts, or kind of going down the list or the schedule, but they're actually sharing their response to it, and they're sharing how they feel about those things that are happening during the day. That's what builds that strong, solid foundation of a successful relationship. And I would say that it doesn't matter if this is a heterosexual relationship. This is across the board. It doesn't matter, gay, lesbian.
Any two people.
Yes, any two people. Exactly, any two people.
So how can a woman or the partner of a man, male or female partner, how can that person help the other one to engage emotionally, to really express, to even know their feelings and to express them?
Well, I think a big piece of it is being patient, number one. Once you realize, there is a problem here, there is an issue with this, knowing that... I
do say patience is a virtue, but it's a hard one to have.
It's not going to change overnight. Realize that it's scary, too, because the person who isn't taking so much emotional risk, that's why the word risk is in there, right? Because they are going to feel vulnerable. So they're going to the depths of what they're feeling, and there's some scary feelings in there. And so not sharing it has maybe been protective. Maybe it's been a coping strategy that's worked well for them. So this is really new territory. So I would say be patient. And I would also say for in the a heterosexual relationship where it's a woman and a man, that if the men, just for the women to understand that men they don't have that emotional language and fluency, and just realizing that they need to be helped along, with that. And that they could almost take a more of a gentle approach with the person, and maybe even help them along, just like what we do when I'm in a session with a couple, or even, if it's a man and I see that that's happening, I just slow down. I go really slow with them. I may have them tune into what's happening physiologically first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what sometimes someone will recognize. I'll say, what's happening in your body. And I know this is your area, so I'm sure you can attest to this. So sometimes
the body carries everything.
Yeah, I'm not
always pay attention.
Down. Yeah, I'm not going thought cognitive. I'm not going here down. I'm going more bottom up. So men, women can really maybe even ask and start, asking those types of questions themselves. Are you feeling tense? Are you feeling your heart racing? Like what's going on? And just showing that you're in a caring way, asking some of those questions.
I'm thinking about something that goes on a lot, that the man or the woman might be feeling that I want to end this relationship, but they might just be feeling it, and it doesn't mean they really want to end it, but they need to express it. So that's where that patience and that listening can help. To just talk about that a bit. Yes,
exactly. I think, did you say active listening? Is that what you said?
I didn't say that. But
okay. But yeah, I think that's definitely, an important point. And I think women can also realize that what I said earlier is that to recognize these acts of service as expressing love, and we're not seeing that as much or as open to that. But I think looking at that and going, yeah, my guy did do all of these things, and that's just a much easier way for him to express his love to you. So sometimes you got to recognize it, because I will see some women who they'll really poo-poo it. They'll really say, oh, that doesn't matter. And it's like, well, you've got to give him, some credit. These things do really matter. They matter to him. And he may not be able to say, I love you so much and you mean so much to me, and I would be devastated if you left me. They're not saying that. Right. They're vacuuming the floor and helping with the dishes or the kid or changing diapers. So doing those things. And I think women can, there's a lot of good literature out there, articles and books that will help educate you about this exact topic that we're talking about, so that the women can, also get more in touch with what they're feeling as well, and being able to communicate better to their.
Oh, you said something really important. That the women may express feelings, but they may not really be expressing the true feeling. They may be expressing the surface feeling. I'm angry and I'm hurt, yes. But the underlying feeling that I'm not good enough, or, you
yes.
don't love me, they may not be able to express that.
Right. Like the guy might be getting anger from the wife, or nagging and complaining, and it's another one that, happens quite a bit, but they're not saying that, when you don't, talk to me or communicate with me, I feel like I'm not important to you, or I'm not on your radar. So yes. And just as, men may struggle with their stuff, sometimes even women are unsure of that part too, that there is an underlying view or thought or feeling that has to be expressed, because that sometimes the guys might miss it. So they might not really be listening, or they might be tuning out, nagging, because you're not saying the real feeling. So yes,
right. So I just wanted to point out, it does go both ways.
It absolutely goes both ways. Yes. And I would say if all else fails, and you try therapy, the therapy that I do is called emotionally focused couples therapy. And what it is designed to do is to access those underlying feelings and emotions and get people out of these negative cycles that they can get into. But I work with the woman and the man in the exact same way. So I'm not doing anything like drastically different. I'm really leveling the playing field, and I'm looking
So
at.
you're not picking on the man, because there's a
No.
lot of men that are so afraid that that's going to happen to them in therapy.
And a lot of them, unfortunately, can get picked on. So I would say this is the non-picked on version of therapy. I mean, unless you're doing something blatantly horrible, like you're abusive or something, you're not going to get picked on. So you could try counseling. And I know that because of like what you just said, a lot of men, unfortunately are resistant. But I would say, do your research, because there are methods out there that, really are designed to bring out the best in two people. And as a couples therapist, I consider myself the therapist for the relationship. I don't look at myself as, the one partner's or the other's therapist. I am the therapist for what's going on between those two people. And so that would be, what you need if you can't. And that's if you can't do this on your own. And I know therapy is not for everybody. So I completely get that. But there's some good stuff out there that people can get their hands on, that they could read, that could be very valuable in this area.
And it also requires going into your emotions. It can be uncomfortable.
Yes.
It can be scary at times. So people don't want to do that. But the end result of having opened up is beautiful.
Yes. Just like anything you're trying to work on, it sometimes can get worse before it gets better, because you're facing your fears. You're facing it all. But yet you're right. The outcome, can be remarkable in the level you can take your relationship to when you get these things. The most important piece I would say about emotions is that's what tells you what you need. That's the most basic, primitive, meaning-making system that humans have. So when your emotions come up, we go to our heads, we might start messing with them a little bit. We do like what's called like a reappraisal. But if we can get to the core emotion, we can get underneath the surface, you'll know exactly what you need from your partner. So that's why emotions they're key.
So tell us about your weekend workshops that delve more into this.
Oh, yes. I do a workshop, which actually may be even a good way, a much more, less risky way to kind of get into some of this stuff. So we do sometimes 2-day, and then we've been, doing like a 1-day lately, because we know it's a little bit of an easier commitment for people. And we do pretty much what I just talked about. We try to help people on their own, like through different education, PowerPoint videos. We educate them on some of the negative patterns that they can get in with their partners. We educate them on why emotions are important. We educate them on attachment theory, which is, probably one of the most accepted theories in psychology about how we, come to choose romantic partners, and our needs, and who we have to rely on, and how we go about the world feeling safe or unsafe, and those kinds of things. So we could do a whole
but it's not threatening for them to come. They don't have to share in front of a group of other people.
They don't, and they do exercises one-on-one. So we have them, spend some time doing different exercises that takes them very methodically through these things. So people come away, I think, feeling like it was very deep experience with their partners, and that they always say they learn things they didn't even know. So even people who've been together for a really long time, I think, come away with a lot of that, aha experience about their partners. So it's really been wonderful, and we're very, very supportive, and it's a very safe environment. And yes, we don't make people share who don't want to share. And people seem to really like it. We're not pressuring anyone. We're not making it uncomfortable for anyone. And so if they sort of a taste, maybe even into what we might do in therapy, if they chose to do that. But I think it could be an inroad to that. But more than anything, I just want to give people a really good experience, even if it's just for a day, giving them a very good experience that they can have with their partner that is definitely out of the ordinary.
And tell us the name of the workshops that you do?
Sure. It's called Hold Me Tight, and it's based on Dr. Sue Johnson's program. Her book is also called Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love. And you can get the information either, well, we have actually a website dedicated to it. It's called www.hmtflorida.com. But I will say these workshops are held all over the country. So it's a format that we generally follow that's been a copyrighted program. So they are available all over if you're not in South Florida.
Wonderful. And now there's another area that you work with, and it's called discernment counseling. So
Yes.
share with us what that is and how that can help people.
Discernment counseling is quite different. It's working with the couple exactly where they're at, because we know that marriage therapy or couples therapy doesn't really gain traction if 2 people are what we call mixed agenda. So when a couple comes in, I want to gauge, are they both wanting to save the relationship? Are they both wanting to stay committed to each other? Sometimes you get people who say, I'm not sure. You have someone who's seriously considering divorce. You have someone who may have even already seen a lawyer. Or sometimes they both are leaning out. They're both leaning out maybe because they fight all the time and they're in high distress and they're just tired of it. And so it's a very different way to work with people. It's usually a longer session, like around 2 hours. You work with them together and then one-on-one, and then you bring them back together. And it's a very specific protocol. I ask very pointed questions, and they're really designed to figure out the future of their relationship. So the goal is really for them to gain clarity and confidence with how to move forward. And it's usually, it could be that one session alone where they make the decision. Sometimes it's, we try to do it in less than 5 sessions. And so we're exploring the 3 main options, which is really stay the same and do nothing, move towards separation and divorce, or the 3rd option is trying an all-out, in the trenches marriage therapy, reconciliation, we call that, for 6 months. And so those are the 3 options that we thoroughly explore, and we do it in a way, again, where we don't want to feel like there's a good guy or a bad guy. So someone isn't like wrong or shamed because maybe they're thinking of ending their marriage. And so it's really just, so that these people can decide, their future together and what they want to do. And so that's been a very, interesting way of working with couples as well.
It's beautiful. Useful.
Thank you.
So I have one more question
Sure.
before we finish, and that is that you write regularly for about.com, for yourtango.com, and I've seen you on Huffington Post.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a funny kind of question. How can you have so much to say about couples and relationships and marriage? It seems like it should be so simple, just a few comments about it.
In the beginning, it was very hard to come up with all these ideas and new ideas. Then as you start doing it, you get into a groove, and then ideas seem to pop in my head like constantly. So sometimes I get ideas just from looking at other people's stuff, and I think of maybe a different angle or a counterpoint or something that I can just, highlight something a little different. So it is a lot of writing, and like anybody, sometimes I can get a little stuck, like, oh my gosh, what can I write about now? But it's been really, wonderful. I love the idea that I can get information out to such a large audience, like people that I've never met and people all over the country, and that they're able to get, I think, I guess, a viewpoint from someone who lives it, because I am married, I have kids, I've kind of had the same kinds of experiences that just everyday people have, but I also work so intensively with couples and trying to fix and help them when they are really stuck or they are having a lot of problems. And so I feel like I guess I like that I can offer them whatever I have inside, inside my brain, that I can put it out there somewhere and that people can hopefully benefit from it. So it's really been a privilege to be able to do that.
So tell us how people can get in touch with you, and
Sure.
something upcoming. Just let it.
Okay, sure. My website is www.thetalkingsolution.com. So that's all one word. That's probably the best way to find me and to get all my contact information. And we are working on doing another one-day couples workshop in April. We have a tentative date set sometime in April, but then you can get all the information on the website. And then we're going to look to do it probably every couple months. So if you can't get to this one, you'll get to another one. And if you're on my website, if you sign up for my newsletter, you will get a free copy. It's a small ebook about marriage therapy and how to make it work for you and your spouse. So it's sort of a little, guide, a succinct guide on marriage therapy, so that people, if they're considering it, they can get an idea of what it's about and how to even prep for it so that they make the most of it.
It's a great little booklet you're offering.
Great, thank you.
I haven't heard that before, people getting prepared for going into marriage therapy.
Right. Or some people, I think, lurk around a lot online because they're thinking about it. They're not sure. They're just kind of, they want to know, what it's about or who does it, or, maybe there's even some stigma. So people want to get a sense that this is an okay thing to do. And I think some people then, what's the first thing people do now for almost anything, right? They go to the internet. So. So it's a little resource, to help people.
So just say your website once more.
Sure, www.thetalkingsolution.com.
Great. So Marni, thank you so much for participating in this series.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
And to those of you listening, I look forward to speaking to you again soon.